Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches, or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Ekwa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode, and I'm joined by a recurring guest, Naren Arulrajah, the CEO of Ekwa Marketing. Thanks so much for coming back and joining us again.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you for having me, Eric. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I always learn something new when I speak to you, Naren. And today we're going to be talking about the methods that worked for me when I was dropping all of our PPO plans. And we're going to be talking about different methods, but specifically the ones that really worked for me, and also what you're seeing out there with your clients. So ultimately, the objective is to replace PPO plans or start to reduce your dependence on PPO plans. How do we do this? There's different ways to do this with Google SEO. Let's start with the first way, and that is by dropping PPO plans first and then focusing on Google SEO. Is that a good way to do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have been helping practice owners drop PPO plans going back to 2008. So I guess 16 years now. At the beginning, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing, but that's what I ended up doing. And you'll hear more about those stories. So when doctors start getting patients from Google, and those patients are not costing them half of what they produce. Because remember, when somebody's on a PPO plan, uh, there's two problems. One is you don't get full fees. You might get 55% of the fees because the PPO plan controls how much you can charge. So you can't raise your fees with inflation, for example. Second, they don't pay you the full amount even in that limited fee that they allow you to charge. So on both hands, you're hammered, and you end up, let's say, if you're supposed to make $1 million, you will end up making $550,000. So that's one big problem. The second problem is the patients who are on these PPO plans, even though they might have big, very, very good jobs paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars, the first question is it covered by my plan? If it's not, then the answer is no. So almost it's like an uphill battle. So you end up doing tooth dentistry, you end up, getting paid half the money for all the work you do. So it's the eternal struggle of most practices that are dependent on PPO plans. And especially with inflation that we have seen since 2020, since COVID, it has become like chronic. It has become like unbearable for a lot of people because, your expenses are up 30-40%, including wages, but your income or your revenue hasn't gone up 30-40% because it's all controlled by PPO plans. So this topic today about, the different ways to drop PPO plans is fascinating to me. And hopefully I can share my experience and knowledge, working with practices, I guess, since 2008. So I'm looking forward to it. What was the question again? Can you ask the question, Eric?
Yeah, there's different methods to start to replace PPO plans or drop PPO plans, and ultimately replace them with Google SEO and patients coming in off of Google and not just from the fact that you're participating with an insurance plan. So, for example, one option is to just, start replacing PPO and dropping PPO plans first, and then really beef up and build up your Google SEO. What do you think about that option?
Yeah, so I've seen this a lot because I think the pain is so severe doctors are like, I'm done with this. And they just wake up one morning and they like literally resign. I'm of course, trying to make a point here, but typically that's the behavior, right? So they're sick of this. It's like, a relationship, you have a toxic relationship, let's say you have with somebody, and one day you're like, I'm done with this, and you just walk away, right? But this is not like a single relationship. This is an entire practice, an entire business. So there are employees, there are patients, there's all these, people involved. It's not just you and this one other person. So with this first approach, I call this the ready, fire, aim. So you fire first, and then you try to, see what you can do to salvage the situation, right? So you start dropping the PPO plans, and then you deal with the consequences. So typically, what happens in this scenario is, I understand why doctors do it. They're like so desperate, they can't take it anymore, and especially after COVID, the pain is so intense. Like literally, they're losing money, so they're like, forget it, I'm done with this, and they just drop, right? The good news is you can do it anytime. The bad news is I have seen horror stories. Like I've seen practices lose, half their patients, for example. And that's because they didn't think it through. They didn't plan properly. They didn't know what to tell their patients to make them stay. And also, remember when you're on a PPO plan, one thing the PPO plans are doing for you is to sending you new patients. So their schedule is full. Yes, you're losing money on all those new patients because you don't get paid full fees, you only get paid half, but still they are full and everybody's busy and everybody's working really, really hard. And all of a sudden you drop the plans, you're not getting those new patients anymore from the plans you dropped. So all of a sudden your schedule kind of, becomes like a Swiss cheese, lots of openings. And then because you didn't plan it properly, you also lose a lot of existing patients because had you planned it, you could probably keep 85% of the patients even after you drop the PPO plans. Because you didn't plan it properly, let's say you lost half. So this could be a financial disaster. So on one hand, people are, wondering about what am I going to do? When I say people, your team members, because, they see the schedule is so empty and they see lots of existing patients not coming. So it creates even further issues. The good ones are quitting, the bad ones remain, and it creates this negative cycle. And like in many cases, I've seen, practices, let's say that are doing $1.5 million shrink to like 800, 900. And then what the doctor has to do is to rebuild. Then they invest in marketing. Then they, invest in creating a relationship-driven practice, like almost like when you're on a back foot, when you are struggling. And then it takes 2 to 3 years to kind of get back, to being a successful, non-PPO dependent practice. Now, I'm not a huge fan because I don't like to go backwards. I don't like my future to be worse than my present, even though the present sucks. That's why doctors make this decision, even though you're not making profit. So you're making like your overhead is like 80%, 85%. In other words, it's better off for you to work for somebody else than run such a practice and own such a practice. So I know why they do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think regardless of the amount of challenges we have, I think we should, try to think it through and come up with a plan and then execute the plan. That's the way I think you can create wonderful results.
Yeah, so that's like the ripping off the Band-Aid and hoping the wound is healed and just kind of jumping into the deep end. But I get it. There's dentists out there that have just, they're fed up, they've had it, they're not happy, and they just want to pull that plug and figure it out later. However, like you said, this sometimes cannot go well, and you start losing patients that you could have kept if you did it a little more strategically. And then they have to rely on now sometimes expensive ads to try to replace those patients. So there's some pros and cons to every situation, but this one I don't think I would really recommend. I would do it a little more strategically. So let's go on to another method and let's call this method 2, where you're dropping PPO plans, but you're trying to dominate Google simultaneously. Can you talk about this option?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to clarify why you are recommending, dominating Google simultaneously. What is Google? Why is it important in the context of dropping PPO plans? The only function of the PPO plan is to send you new patients. So you need to replace the patients you're going to lose when you drop, because you will lose, even if you do it well, you will lose 10 to 15% of your patients. And you need to replace the flow of new patients. So let's say you're used to getting 20 new patients from Delta every month. You need to get those patients from somewhere else, right? So what you're recommending in this method is you do it simultaneously. On one hand, you are working on Google. In other words, you're replacing Delta with Google. And on the other hand, you're dropping these plans. So you're doing it simultaneously. Now, Google SEO by far is the best way to get new patients. Why? Because it's, yes, you have to pay somebody to do the work, but you don't have to pay per click or pay per patient, which is what you have to do with Google Ads. So, for example, if you are $1 million practice, if you're dependent on Google Ads, you have to at least spend 50 grand, for $1 million practice. If you are a PPO practice, then you're giving up $400,000, $500,000 in PPO write-off. So definitely $50,000 is significantly less than the actual cost of PPO plans. But the best method is SEO. SEO would cost you, let's say, $15,000. And the other thing is, over time, that same $15,000 will equal $100,000 worth of Google Ads. Why? Because SEO gets better over time and Google Ads will get more expensive over time. Google has to make more money next year than it did last year. So the way it does that is it charges you more, per click and so forth. So SEO is the best method, but SEO, the catch is only 5% of practices get 95% of the free traffic. Remember this, 5% of the practices get 95% of the free traffic. How do you know you are in the top 5% getting 95%? You will be ranking for 100 or more keywords on page 1 of Google, meaning when I type these keywords, you show up at the top of Google. So now that takes time. So in this method, you're doing it simultaneously. So if you are, let's say, building SEO, it'll take probably a year for you to start seeing meaningful results. Like I think Dr. Eric, it took you a year to get 30 new patient calls a month. And then today you're getting 60 new patient calls a month just with SEO. The good news is the cost of those patients are a fraction of Google Ads cost and even a lot less than the PPO patient cost, but it takes a bit of time. So if, let's say, if you're starting to do it simultaneously and all of a sudden tomorrow you need 20 new patients, Google SEO will take a bit of time. So, you won't be able to get the 20 new patients immediately if you just do it simultaneously. So I would recommend at least giving SEO a 6-month head start. So that way SEO is slightly ahead of you starting to drop plans and it's starting to bring in the high quality non-PPO dependent patients. And then as that gets stronger and stronger, then drop plans one by one. So I'm kind of recommending that. I think the second method is okay because here it's not like ready fire aim where you already ripped the band-aid off and now trying to figure out how do I avoid the pain. Here rather you are just you're doing it together. You are like you have all the antiseptic and everything ready and you're doing it, but it'll be nice to do replacing the patients with Google first before you worry about or before you get into so I'll say you can do this, but at least give SEO a 6-month head start, I think, which is what you ended up doing. So it's kind of like a modified version of this.
Yeah, we started to drop some of our smaller PPO plans, and then we started to, I think we met a few years ago and we started to really strategize and improve our SEO with like you said, keywords, and there's a lot of other things that are going on behind the scenes. But when a patient or a prospective patient types in Google, dentist near me in our vicinity, we pop up. So we started to drop the PPO plans strategically from the worst ones or the smallest ones, build up our SEO, and now we're at the point where, as of this year, where I'm completely out of network. So you're right, we did kind of do it simultaneously. Now, another option is or method 3 is sort of the opposite way, where you're really planning this. You want to reduce that insurance dependence, but you focus on starting to dominate Google first, and organic SEO first, and then build this up and get stronger and stronger with SEO. Start to get a ton of new patients from Google, and then start to drop your PPO plans. This I would call method number 3. Can you talk about this method?
Yeah, so this is I'll talk about this through a story. So I met this dentist in 2009. She was one of our early clients. I think we started helping dentists in 2008. And she heard about us through somebody, and a really nice lady. She's in Virginia. I'll call her Dr. B. And Dr. B was working 4.5 days a week in 2009. Pretty much all her patients came from PPO, and she was making $650,000 in 2009. And she was kind of starting to, feel the effects of dentistry. When you work really, really hard every single day for a couple of decades, you start paying a price for it, right? I mean, health wise. So she was like, she really had it, but she didn't have any other choice. So she just kept doing it. So I think she heard me speak at a conference and about Google and how you can get really high quality patients by dominating SEO. She just said, hey, I'm only committing for like a 1 year plan. So if it doesn't work, I'll lose, a few $1,000. But if it does work, maybe it'll change my life. But anyways, I don't know what she was thinking, but I'm assuming that's, knowing her now, I've known her for like 15 years. She's one of those people who kind of gets a new idea. And if that idea makes sense, she would give it a go. So anyways, she started working with us. Very low key client. I hardly ever spoke to her. We did our thing, we did our SEO, and I know her rankings were moving up. I know the number of calls she was getting was growing. And then she started telling me, Naren, something interesting is happening. I'm getting so many new patients. I can't take care of everyone because I'm already working 4.5 days. And one of the reasons I hired you is because I wanted to get better patients. Hopefully, I can work less. So what I started doing, my husband, works works for the U.S. government, so very smart, person up there as well. So they both strategized and said, what we should do is we should drop the worst plan, the one that pays us the least, because what's the point of getting paid 40 cents on the dollar when you can get paid 100 cents on the dollar, right? So they'll, just use common sense. I mean, anybody in their situation would have done that, because she didn't want to work more hours. She didn't want to work a Saturday. She didn't want to work 5.5 days. So she's like, okay, let me just, drop the worst plan. She did that, did once, and then did second time, and did the third time. And before you know it, in a 4 year period, she dropped every plan, and she went from working 4.5 days to 3.5 days. So the amount of time she ended up working went down because, remember, for health reasons, she wanted, a better work-life balance. But the funny thing is actually her practice doubled. So she went from making $650,000 to $1.3 million. So, so this is 2009 is when we started working together, and this is around 2013. And of course, it's very, very, very hard to sell a $650,000 practice 4.5 days. It was pretty lucrative to sell a $1.3 million practice in 2013, working 3.5 days, because there was a lot of people who wanted what she had. So here is a person who didn't even think about dropping PPO plans. That was not because she needed the money, so didn't even cross her mind. But the glut of new patients coming from Google forced her hand almost in a good way to drop these plans that were not paying her. And then eventually she ended up dropping everybody because everybody was only giving her a fraction of what she owed. And the other thing that happened is, instead of doing like tooth dentistry, 1 crown here, 1 crown there, she was doing like, $10,000 cases, $5,000 cases. So she's actually started enjoying dentistry again. She would go to more classes. She would, brush up her skills. She was passionate about, certain things, like ceramic crowns, for example. And so she joined some academies and she got really active in them, and she started teaching. And then eventually she started even becoming a vice president of an association because she had time, and she started realizing, you don't need to like, work so hard and, work yourself to a bone. There's other ways to, enjoy life and do better in life. So that's the story of almost like an accidental, person who ends up dropping PPO plans. She didn't have a mega plan. She didn't have even a goal of doing that because she was not conscious of it. Just that, those opportunities that these new patients brought her allowed her to, say, hey, now that I have this strong hand, let me just let go of the weak part of my business. And that is kind of funny. I know you didn't do that. You kind of, I would say you are a between method 2 and method 3. You really wanted to drop the plans, but you were a little proactive. So you gave yourself some time to do it, like 6 months to a or 20 year, Eric. In her case, she didn't even have this in a plan. She was not that, like, I guess in those days, nobody talked about dropping PPO plans. There was no like, Gary Taka's or, podcasts or Reducing Insurance Dependence Academy to help people think about these things. So she was a pioneer, but it was like an accidental pioneer. But I guess the reason I'm sharing that story is, um, sometimes the best defense is the best offense. Offense creates opportunities. I mean, those of you who know sports know, if you have a strong offense, like I remember the good old days when Michael Jordan was playing, it was like, they had an amazing offense, and that offense created opportunities. So I think it's a great story. And I think even if you are not thinking about dropping PPO plans, I really think you need to stop depending on a marketing method that's costing you 40 to 50% of every dollar you make, and start cultivating other marketing methods. Why? Because that'll create opportunities for you. That'll allow you to do things you are not able to do today or even think about today.
What would you tell the dentists out there that, are just scared, they're fearful that they're going to lose all their patients, and they just don't want to take that next step? It sounds like, being more strategic, like method 3, being more prepared, to kind of overcome that fear, to see that they can do this, they can replace patients, by focusing on the marketing, the Google SEO, and then kind of build up that confidence to start dropping PPOs. What would you tell the dentists out there about that?
I would flip this question back to you. You have actually been through this, right? What would you tell a dentist, like having gone to, like right now, you are free of all PPO plans,
Mhm.
and you were dependent on PPO plans for decades, right? I mean, like going back to the start of the practice.
Mhm.
And you're not a tiny practice. You are doing millions and millions of dollars. You're a pretty large practice. So you had a lot at stake, a lot of employees, a lot of bills to pay, like a bigger footprint, all kinds of stuff. So what would you tell people, Eric?
Yeah, I would say too, we did it strategically. We saw that we could successfully do it with the smaller plans that were a smaller percentage of our patients, the MetLifes, the Aetnas, the Guardians. We saw we could successfully do it with those plans. We built relationships with the patients. Then we went to uh, Blue Cross Blue Shield, which was about 20% of our practice. We saw that we could successfully do it there. We built up the confidence. And then the big one was Delta, and that was about 50% of our practice. And, you know, my message is, to not be fearful of it. If you're a relationship driven practice and you've built good relationships with patients, they're not going to want to leave. And if you give them the message and you got your team on board and you all have the good verbiage, and explaining to the patients that they can stay. We still process all the claims for the patients, so a lot of patients are worried about that they're just going to be on their own. Um, and you can successfully do this. And if you're scared, do it strategically, like we did.
Yeah, I think strategically, and you also started working on marketing. I think we have been working together for like 3, 4 years now. So,
Hmm.
so you realized like before, like you needed the offense before you made this call, because if you don't have new patients coming in, some other way, then you're putting yourself in a kind of a weak position. And also you worked on training your team. I know we listen to calls sometimes and provide you feedback. You worked on, like you said, the relationship driven side of your practice, because you need to give them a strong reason to come and keep coming and not go anywhere else. And that's the relationship, that's the trust, that's the knowledge you have, and how they feel about your practice.
Yeah, that is huge. And Naren is really was there to help me. And for the dentists out there, if you're thinking enough is enough with PPO plans, and you want to start, with method 3, for example, and strengthen your SEO, check out www.equa.com/MSMSFD, www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD. And Naren, you typically start with a strategy call, correct?
Absolutely. So our team will spend 6 hours kind of looking at all your online presence. How are you doing? And then they'll tell you, okay, are you doing extremely well or you're not? So there's around 6 things we look at as it pertains to Google SEO and Google Maps. And then we look at other things from an influence standpoint. And then we'll tell you, okay, you're getting an A here, B there, C there. And we'll give you a report card and a game plan. So a 12-month plan on how do you get A's for all the things that are important to get A's in, because you don't want to be depending on that PPO plan as your source of new patients. Rather, you want to depend on amazing marketing as your source of new patients. So once you get the report card and the game plan, then execute it, whether you work with us or somebody else. So this entire review, it's a $900 value. Once again, the link is ekwa.com, ekwa.com/MSMSFD. Use the link, book a marketing strategy meeting, and see how you can turn your future around, regardless of whether you're desperate and you want to do this tomorrow, or whether you are thinking about it but not that desperate, like in option 3.
Awesome, Naren. Such a great episode. So many great nuggets. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.